What's going on, everybody? It's Brian Tripp. Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Live podcast, where we interview the very best real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and business leaders all throughout the country. And today I am excited to be joined by Mr. Ian Horowitz. How's it going today, Ian?
Good. What's going on, Brian?
So I'm just talking to you a little bit offline. I'm excited to kind of dig into what you're up to. You said something interesting a second ago before we hopped on. You said that you're an opportunistic investor. You're just kind of going out there where you see the opportunity, and you are a full-time firefighter in the city of Baltimore for 15 years, and now you are currently a full-time opportunistic real estate investor.
Yeah, well, I don't know which part is more interesting, but if you ever watch The Wire, that's exactly where we worked. Everything you see in The Wire from about season 3 on is absolutely true. My business partner and I both worked for the city full time. When the riots were happening, that's right where we worked. We're in the middle of it all the time. But luckily for us, the city was deplorable prior to that and forced our hand into real estate investing because they started changing our pension and our benefits, our schedule, and a whole bunch of different things. And it forced our hand.
What do you? I don't know. What do you mean by that? What do you mean? Your pension change? What does that mean?
Yeah, so you guys got to understand us is, one of the things you give up going to be, let's call it a public servant for what it is, right? Like we went to go do our dream job of being a fireman. You go work for a government agency. In exchange for that, you're giving up a little bit of pay for number one, job security, number two, health benefits, number three, instead of paying into Social Security, you're paying into a pension system. Well, we got hired in 07 and 08 respectively. Well, everyone knows what happens in 07 and 08. The end of the world comes. So now you got firefighters and police officers and all other public workers being furloughed. Pensions are drying up. Look up Detroit, California, private industries all across the country. I'm sitting at the kitchen table talking to these guys that got 30 years, 25, 30 years on the job. Our pension will be fine. Our pension will be fine. There's $1 billion in there. And you're watching teachers and firefighters and everybody else across the nation and their pensions just going by the wayside. There was no overtime. They were changing our medical benefits, everything that was going on. The whole country went through that. They started changing our schedule. They came in and they said, oh, your pension, guess what? You're going from a 20-year retirement to a 25-year retirement. I said, you know what? I love this job. I absolutely love going out there, helping people, but there's got to be a better way, compressing things with your family. My wife's like, hey, I want to have kids. I want to stay home. Like, oh my God, how am I going to do this on like a small salary and everything else going on at the same time? And luckily for me, I found my way to real estate because I said, what can I do to make money while I'm asleep at work and somebody's paying me for that time while I'm stuck at work? And that led me down a path to real estate.
How'd you get into it? What did you go to a class? Did you hear how did you get into real estate?
Yeah, so we kind of lucked out. My in-laws, they sell and service outdoor power equipment. They had a guy every year came in, would buy new equipment. And one year he didn't come in and they said, hey man, what happened? He said, oh, I've been buying rental properties for each year for the past 30 years. I now have 30 rental houses and now I'm retired. I'm like, dude, what a great story. Coincidentally, at the same time, I'm trying to find my own way in my career path and I'm having all these issues at work. And I said, you know what? I got to find a way. And one day at work, some guy's like, hey man, you want to go to this meeting? And I said, sure. So I went to the meeting and sure as, I'm sorry, I'm a little raw. I was cursed. I apologize. I get there and the guy that's presenting is presenting on subsidized rentals. And I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to do this exact thing because that's what that guy that my in-laws knew. That's exactly what he did. He did subsidized rentals and he had 30 of them and he retired early. And I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. I don't know if the universe decided to put us in touch that day. Listened to that guy. I said, hey man, you want to grab a beer afterwards? Went out, grabbed a beer. And that guy kind of took me under his wing and showed me the way. But, step one was even just going to that meeting and off we went from there. So
who was that, by the way?
I was this guy named Pete. He had, a few hundred units here in Baltimore. He had 3 large apartment buildings at the time. He had a bunch of single family houses. Obviously we got a kind of a cool story. I'm like, hey man, I'm a fireman. I'm trying to figure this out. I guess he naturally felt some way to help me out in the same way that I was like, hey, I want to come dude, I would go ride around in his car all day for free, just riding around to see what this guy did every day, right, wrong, or indifferent. He didn't run the best business in the world, but he was out there doing stuff every day. And I said, you know what? Let me get out there and just go with you. I would get in his car and go ride around, go look at vacant houses, go to the apartment building, see what problems he was having, and just riding around and learning from him in that fashion. I learned a lot of good things. I learned some bad things, but you know what? When it was time for me to branch off on my own, I knew exactly how I wanted to execute. And the guy was literally, he was like a textbook. He was like, this is how you want to fix this. I was like, oh yeah, I read that in a book, or I read it online in a forum. It was like everything started to come together all as one. And I said, hey man, I'm ready to buy a house. And he's like, hey, if I find one, I'll let you know. Sure as shit. A few weeks later, here we are. He presents me with a house, not in the best area. And I said, you know what? I'm 20 or whatever I was at the time. Shoot, I can't even do that math really quick. I was just shy of 30. I said, you know what? If I'm going to lose it, let's just lose it now and figure it out. And off we went.
You know, what I love about that story, and this is what I tell new people all the time, find someone local in your area who is doing what you want to do and follow them around for free if they'll let you, work for them for free if they'll let you, and learn from someone who is where you want to be. You don't have to go out here and pay all these gurus, 30, 40, 50 grand just to learn the business.
No, it's cyclical, right? Like, so I did that and I learned from this gentleman, Pete. Coincidentally, one of our friends, Pete, he's like, hey man, like I really want to learn, this other Pete Belden. He's like, hey, I want to learn from you guys. We're like, yeah, so we would show him, a little here and there. I give the guy credit. He went out and stalked us, figured out where all of our rental properties were. And then he comes back to us and said, hey man, I got a house under contract right around the corner from you. Do you mind if I come over and start seeing what you guys are doing? Because I want to copy exactly what you're doing. I said, you did all that and you figured out what we were doing. Great. Let's go. And we started showing them the way, and a lot of people do talk about trying to find a way to latch on. And it's not always, some people are like, I got to provide value, or I got to do this, or I got to do that. Me just getting in the car, the guy just wanted someone to ride around with him all day when I was learning. And he wanted a friend. That was it. And that's what I was. Hey man, you want me to go to the store and get you a beer? I'll get you a beer. You want me to go run to Home Depot? I'll go to Home Depot. If not, I'll ride around with you and we'll just talk all day and I'll see what you do. And that's it. So it was
I love that. I love that because for so many reasons, and people make all these excuses about why they're not getting going in real estate, and they try to make things so difficult. How simple is that story? How simple is that? All it took was you knowing what you wanted, finding someone who had what you wanted, and just asking him.
Yeah, man. And that's exactly it. And I think a lot of people lose sight of it. They get so stuck in all this, all these papers around the office, right? Like, oh, I got to do this and I need this pro forma this and blah, 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 that. Sometimes you need to be tactile and you need to go out and learn, execute. And if you don't have it, or you're scared to do it on your own, go execute with someone else. That same guy, Pete, the second one that I told you about, Belden, who learned from us, later on, about 2 years later, he comes to us and says, I got a 34-unit apartment building. And we're like, well, Pete, you got 10, 15 rentals. You have a great network of people. You have all the people that know how to finance. Go do it on your own. He's like, no, I want to do it with you guys. I said, well, why us? He goes, well, I'm a little scared. I feel as though you guys provide me value. You showed me the way. Actually, we own a 34-unit building, 44 units today together in another location that we never even would have done if it wasn't for him. So some of that providing value pays off in the long run in other ways that you'll never even expect either. Whether it's for you, for yourself, in a partnership, whatever it may be, just take action. If you have no money, you have a lot of time and no money. Well, your best source is time. Go send letters out, go find deals, go do whatever you can to help that one person or those group of people that you want to be like. Or if your best source is money and you have no time, well, maybe you could be a financier and learn through that way. So you got to just figure out what your best skill set is and exploit it and utilize it for the best way you possibly can for yourself or for someone else.
Yeah. No, I love that. And you were telling me before we got started as well, I would love for you to kind of reiterate everything you got going on. You've got a single family house portfolio. You've got multifamily. You've got some storage units as well in a relatively short period of time. It sounds like 10, 11 years you've been doing this. What have you been able to accomplish so far in real estate, Ian?
Yeah. So we started in late 2012, early 2013. We have 100 single family rentals local to Baltimore. We have about another 125 doors in multifamily. And we have about 100,000 square feet of commercial space and about 500,000 square feet of storage. But one thing I want to bring up, and you hit it earlier, is I said, yeah, we're just opportunistic investors. And I think a lot of people take that and say, okay, well, I'm going to buy a multifamily deal, and I'll buy a single family deal, and I'm going to go buy a storage deal. I'm just going to kind of do it. And if someone looked at us and say, oh, you guys are like all over the place, it's actually the complete opposite. If we would have had this interview 5 years ago, let alone 3 years ago, we were only doing single family real estate. That's where we live. That was our expertise. That's where we cut our teeth. That's where we got our processes. That's where we learned everything that we needed to learn, from financing, finding deals, figuring out our leases, our property management skills, selling houses, whatever it was. We learned all that in the single family world. And then once we got really good at that, now it was just taking another cog or whatever and putting it in the machine and turning the wheel, and we could start to grow slowly but surely. And it started with a 7-unit building, then a 34-unit building, then a 76-unit building. And then it was just rinse or repeat, because we figured out all these steps and got really, really, really good at one thing first that allowed us to grow into everything else that we're doing today.
And you did all this with a full-time job too.
Correct.
You didn't leave your job until recently.
No, we just left our job in the past 90 days.
So to the folks who might be watching this right now or listening to this, how are you able to, and I understand a firefighter schedule is going to be a little bit different. I know here in Alabama, it's 1 on, 2 off.
Yep.
I'm sure it's going to be something similar, at least similar to that.
Yep.
So you're going to have maybe a little bit more time, but it's the 1 on is 24 hours. So you're going to get a lot of sleep time that you're going to have as well when you are off. But how are you able to do all of this, put systems in place, processes in place, have balance, having a partner, doing all these deals with a full-time job?
Yeah, Brian, I wish I had like a simple answer to be like, oh, well, if you just do this, this, and this. I tell everybody, dude, we were out of our minds. Like, how do we do it? I don't know. We just had to. A lot of it came out of survival mode and having to do it. A lot of it came from growth and actually doing things and realizing, oh man, that wasn't cool. Like right here, we just closed a $12 million storage deal, and I already have a list of bullet items that I'm like, well, that didn't go good. Let's figure that out for the next one, so that never happens again. But here's the other thing. When we went to work for 24 hours. I should pull up the picture. There was this one morning I walked in. We got in right around between 5 and 6 in the morning. That's about what time everyone gets in. I walked in, and the gong goes off, and the truck's going out for a hazmat, which means there's a hazardous material incident, and it was an overturned train. And I was like, whatever. So I go and get changed. I go and relieve my guy. The gong goes off for us. I left the firehouse at 5:50 in the morning, and I got back the next day at 8 a.m. I was out on an incident for over 24 hours. We were selling a house. We were literally closing a house, selling a house, and buying another house the same day. You have to find a way and get it done. And when you know what your weaknesses are or what your pain points are going to be, then you can put a system in place and start building around the tough parts. Everyone wants to build around the easy things. Sure. I'm really good at talking. I could easily build out, hey, I want to build a podcast. I'm going to do this, and I'm just going to follow this path, or I'm really good at financing. So let me just keep exploiting that. You can do that, but you can't do those fun things until you get rid of your bad things and fix your pain points first. And then that'll allow you to continue to grow what you're really, really good at.
Well said. Well said. And congratulations to you and your partner for doing what you've done, doing what most won't do. So you have what most don't have. And congratulations on that. And you're not done either. I know that you got a lot going on, but I'd love to provide value to the folks who are watching, listening, specifically in the area of creatively trying to figure out ways to structure deals. Because I know that you said that that's something that you guys have gotten really good at over the years. And I can imagine with as many deals as you've done over a lot of different asset classes, can imagine that you don't have like the cash to do all of this stuff. Banks are not going to finance all of it. You have to come up with creative ways to try to structure these deals. Let's maybe take maybe one of your favorite or one of the most interesting to you. and let's talk about it. Why you had to creatively finance, how you creatively financed it. If the deal maybe it wouldn't even have been done without the creativity. I would love for you to kind of maybe share something with us that we can maybe learn a lesson from.
Yeah. So, like I said, we cut our teeth really, really deep in the single family world, and going through working on owner financing deals, understanding how those things work, led us down this path of writing this book. And this is going to be a little bit of a story, but I think a lot of people will get value out of it. And this is the deal that really changed our lives. So we wrote a book, and it was about subsidized housing because that's what we were really, really good at. And we were marketing, doing that whole thing.
Real quick, Ian, for people that don't know, and I don't even really know, what's subsidized housing? Is that just like Section 8? Is that just
yeah, Section 8 voucher type tenants.
Okay, gotcha.
So they get some sort of subsidy that they offset their rent from the government. That's really popular in the single family world here in Baltimore. And it's a big part of the tenant base. So we got really, really good at that tenant base. So we wrote a book and we're doing our thing. So one day, it's summer of 19, and we haven't bought a single family house. We feel like we're priced out. The phone rings. It's a wholesaler that we've done a bunch of deals with. He calls me up. Shane says, "Hey, Ian, I got this deal for you. It's a 76 unit apartment building, and the lady wants to sell it." I said, "Okay, whatever." And he goes, I go, "Why don't you want to buy it, Shane?" And I give the guy the most respect in the world. And this is something else everybody should take. He goes, "I don't want to own properties. I only want to wholesale. It's just not for me." I said, "I give you massive respect because I feel like everybody would want to jump on a 76 unit apartment building." And I was like, "Okay, well, I respect you for that. Let's talk about this. How are you getting paid?" And we work through this whole thing. He says, "Well, she wants to meet you." I said, "Okay, no problem." And he goes, "Oh, by the way, she wants to owner finance 90% of the deal." And I was like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "And we're talking about a $5 million asset here." And I said, "She wants to owner finance 90% of it." He said, "Yeah, it's a whole story. We'll get into it." Walk over, tell my business partner. Dan's like, "Dude, there's no way." I said, "I'm telling you, we're taking this meeting. There's no way." And he's like, "There's no way." So whatever. So we take the meeting, we sit down. Well, she wants to owner finance this deal because she's looking for her tax benefits for her and her mother, because it's in her mother's name and in the trust. And she feels as though this is the best way for her to accomplish her goals and give her monthly revenue. Mind you, they own this 76 unit apartment building that should be doing about 60,000 a month. They're only pulling in maybe 40,000 a month. And then the management company's burning up every single dollar. They're not making a single dollar on this. It has no debt, not a single dollar. So long story short, we said, okay, we said, "But Miss Judy, I don't want to owner finance this deal. Like, I don't think you understand. I need to go to the bank because I need the money. They're going to give me the money to fix the place up to create value because the place has seen its day. I need to go to the bank." And she's like, "No, I'm only selling it to you if you'll take the owner financing at 90%. And we said, okay. So we go home, we start working through a whole bunch of different scenarios. So we all put our bids in because she was smart enough. She talked to a few different people, and there's a few lessons in this story. We all put a bid in, and we had a really, really good rapport. We got a great backstory. So my gut feeling is that we're going to win this thing. And we get the phone call. We didn't win. I said, "You got to be kidding me." So let it go. A few weeks go by, call her up, say, "Hey, Miss Judy, I know you're coming into a few bucks. We have this other 34 unit building coming up. Would you like to invest in it?" And she goes, "Actually, my negotiation of the contract's not going very well. I'd like to sell it to you guys." We said, okay. So we jumped on it. Didn't even think twice about it. She goes, "Let us know what you can do." We get there. She goes, "Look, if you can give me a few more bucks, I'm going to not negotiate with these guys. Can you guys figure it out?" Well, what we did was, instead of financing it on a 20 or 25-year period, we financed this thing on a 40-year period that allowed us to pay a few more dollars because we knew we were going to hold it for a long period of time. We financed it on a 40-year AM schedule. On top of that, we also got her to give us 6 months of no pay because we said, "Look, we need to put this money into this building to get the money back. In exchange for that 6 months of no pay, we'll give you a 3-year prepayment penalty because you really, really want this cash flow."
A 3-year?
Yeah, we gave her a 3-year prepay. So we did 3 years in 3% in year 1, 2% in year 2, 1% in year 3 for the outstanding principal balance. And that'll come into play here in a second, because we wanted to protect her, because she's now selling us this asset that she originally wasn't going to sell it. So we gave her a few more bucks. We financed it at a longer term. We originally tried to do interest only, but it didn't really change the payment because we stretched that payment out so long that it wasn't a huge difference. We got the 6 months of no pay. We get in there, we start doing our thing. Oh, and then there was a delay because of COVID and everything else and bad tenants. And she was so frustrated. We needed an extra month. She said, okay, well, in May, you're going to start managing it for me. You can take it over 30 days early, and then we'll close it in June. So we got to manage this thing 45 days prior to closing, wound up with the deal. And then ultimately we wound up refinancing it because we've increased it by so much value over the past 18 months that we were able to refinance it, get all of our investors out, pay her a prepayment penalty, and we all went into another deal together. But overall, there's a lot of stuff going on in this story of so I wanted to get it all out there so we could break it down.
Yeah, let's break it down, and I'm sure you're going to do a better job. But some of the questions that I have are, so first of all, it sounds to me like the most important thing to her. This goes back to negotiations 101. We want to know what is most important to them. It sounds to me like the most important thing to her was she wanted the payments. She wanted the payments to come in every month for however many years.
And I'll tell you why. And most people didn't take this extra step to say, hey, Judy, how's your life going in general? And all everybody cared about was the building. And they just kept talking to her about the building. We stopped and said, hey, Judy, like, what's going on in your life? She's like, well, my mom's really sick. We pay for in-home care. I refuse to put her in a nursing home. It cost me about $18,000 a month or some insane number like that.
Yeah.
So you know what we did was we took that and put that in the back of our brain, and we said, well, when we're trying to figure out the payments on a monthly basis, if I could pay her $21,000, I know I'm servicing that. And she said that was really important to her, that her mother was taken care of. That was her number one thing, and that's why she wanted that monthly cash flow. So when you're negotiating, it's not always about the asset. Yes, people want to get hot and heavy because it's easy to keep your mind on it, but also you got to build that relationship. And I think that extra step takes it a long way.
And actively listen.
Yes.
Don't just pretend you're listening, like actively listen. And you said you filed that away. That was obviously an important thing to file away. But here's really the question I want to get at, because how long, for a couple of things. When did you're talking about May and June of 2020, right?
Yep. This whole thing
happened in the pandemic.
Yep. We started negotiations in August of 19. That's when she started reaching out to people. We all put our bids in the fall sometime. Her contract went sideways in December or January. That's when because we were buying Ranson in January of 20. So I must have called her sometime in December. So this whole thing was August of 19 to June of 20. I can't even do that math, but we all know that's a long period of time, right? 6-7 months. And we would have never even been in this deal if we didn't even follow up. You know, a deal's not a deal until it's done, especially in the commercial world. Yeah. It is not done until that money is transacted hands. Yes. And it's completed. So here was really what I was getting at, though. You close on that. You take over management. It sounded like in May. Is that what you said? May, and then you actually bought it in June. Yep.
You bought it right when all these eviction moratoriums are coming down, and you probably need to kick a bunch of people out because you need to start renovating units. How did that go?
Yeah, so that was something interesting, for our investors. When we were talking to them, we said, look, we're going to navigate this, because the other thing you got to remember, here in Baltimore, we're north of the Mason-Dixon line. So we're just south of the Mason-Dixon line, but we act like we're in the north. So we could deal with a lot of stuff because DC's right around the corner. And one of the problems was COVID rules came out. No rent increases, no evictions. They weren't really, none of that money was available to us at that time. So we're inheriting an asset that's already got trouble from the previous property manager, who has deadbeat tenants in there pre-COVID that the courts aren't even doing evictions for. So now we had about 15 vacant, 10 vacancies when we took it over, about another 10 to 15 tenants that were bad to deadbeat tenants.
But hold on, you're still getting money from the subsidies, right? You're still getting
Yeah,
money.
there were some subsidies in there, but it was mostly
No.
market rate tenants. This is the first time we dealt with a lot of market rate tenants in our home market. So it was a little bit different for us. But you know what we did? We went in there and we actively managed. The same way we actively listened, we actively managed. We went in there and said, hey, look, we're the new managers. Here's our process. Step in. You stepped right into our management software, right? People can now pay online, which they couldn't do before. That made some of the deadbeats go away. We were able to rent at new higher rates. And then finally, we were just said, hey, if you have a problem with COVID and you come talk to us, extend the olive branch. We'll work this out. And God's honest truth, a couple of tenants were a little shy and they're like, I'm not really saying anything. But when they got employed again, I want to work out a payment plan. They instantly said it because we had no evictions. One of our biggest recourses for us when we're actively managing, unfortunately, is going to the court system to kind of force the hand because that's the only thing we can carry over someone. However, in this situation, we couldn't do that. So we had to get down in the trenches, and you should be doing this anyway, but treating everyone like a human being, right? Number one. And number two, working through this. We're all going through this together, right, wrong, or indifferent. Do you have another 6 hours? We can get into the politics of COVID, but I don't want to get into that. But in the end, we are all dealing with this thing together, right? Like you're dealing with it as a renter. I'm dealing with it as a landlord. How are we going to get to a mutually agreeable terms? If not, whenever there is an eviction, I'm going to come after you, unfortunately. And that's sometimes you got to be a businessman and do that. But in the meantime, let's try to figure this out so it's mutually beneficial for both parties. And we've had great success at that property. And it was scary. And we said to our investors straight up front, we don't know how this is going to go. We have a gut feeling of how this is going to go, and we will try our hardest to navigate this. But we are confined by a lot of exterior forces that we're going to try to work through.
So when you say investor, she financed 90% of it, but there's a 10% gap and there's renovation costs. Is that so? That's what you're talking about with your investors?
Yeah. So we had to come up with about $500,000 for the down payment. Up here in Maryland, we deal with all kinds of transfer taxes, specialty taxes, mortgage taxes. So there was a couple $100,000 in closing costs. And we needed about right around $1 million to renovate this place. So something else cool that we did. And I don't know if you're what type your audience is, but for those of you that are doing commercial stuff or larger build to rent single family stuff, if you look up C-PACE financing, it's for green energy type financing. And what we were able to do is go in there. We were doing roofs, windows, insulation. There were certain items, plumbing fixtures that were low flow, LED lighting fixtures. We were able to. So what we did was we got about $1 million for our investors. And we got about $600,000 from this C-PACE financing. Wow. And what it does, we were able to bridge that gap. So rather than raising $1.5 million at 8%, we raised $1 million at our 8%, with our equity ownership for our investors. And then we got the PACE money on a no pay for 30 months. And we got that at 4.5% or 5% on a 30-year term. And she was okay with it because we're in an owner financing situation. So this was great that we could leave the PACE financing in place, and bridge the gap for our investors overall. So it lowered our capital raise and it gave us a little more leverage. So this thing's really levered up, quite a bit, which also gave us a better return. So
and then we're going to leave politics aside. I try to stay down the middle at least on this show. I do.
Yeah.
But I think that what you just said earlier is a really important lesson, probably just in life. When you started talking about, you've got two groups of people here. You've got you and the investors and the people who own the building, and a group of tenants that are in two completely different walks of life that see things completely differently. And you're able to come together. How did you present that? How are you able to come together to reach a mutually beneficial kind of ending or relationship?
Yeah. So, a lot of that is, look, man, people don't want to be on the street the same way we don't want a vacant unit, and sometimes, me and Dan or our project manager, Ryan, go out and talk to a tenant. I might be able to talk to you, but I can't resonate sometimes with other tenants, single women with kids or whatever. Luckily for us, Raquel in our office, she resonates very well with a lot of our tenant base across the whole board. So we found out really quick was, look, we'll be the office, a kind of good cop, a little good cop, bad cop on our side of things of like, here's the letter, we send the letter out. Well, then they go and ask Raquel breaks it down to them. And you know what else she did was, not only does she help them, she also provides them with programs that are providing assistance and say, hey, look, not only do you have, look, I understand what they're telling you, but we have all these resources over here that we should look at. I'll help you, but I can't sign your name. And I'll help you work through these situations. And she starts to learn the tenant base, and then she starts to transact that to us and say, hey, Miss So-and-so, great candidate for a payment plan, but she needs to put this much money down. And by her knowing the nuances, her and Ryan knowing the nuances of the property and the tenant base, who's good, who's bad, who's going to work every day, that allows us to paint a better picture on our side of things to say, hey, investors, this was a unique situation. We're all dealing with this. Working class people here, we've all been in a situation at some point in our life where we've gone through something similar. Let's work this out with them and we'll figure it out. And in the end, it's all going to work out. And I truly believe in the universe and karma. You do the right thing today, it'll pay off tomorrow. And so far we've lucked out. So
yeah. Are you still dealing with any COVID as we sit here, just say kind of 1st of December of 2021 into the new year of 2022? What are you seeing? What are you still dealing with COVID wise from just an overall investment standpoint, in particular multifamily?
Yeah. So for us here in Maryland, we are still dealing with, we filed evictions. We're getting eviction dates for 2023. Our court system are really, really far behind. The good news is, however, and this was kind of the beef in the marketplace there for a while, is yes, there was funding out there, but they weren't releasing the funding and we couldn't evict. We're finally seeing some of the funding being released, payments being made, which is nice because there are truly tenants out there that were really, really affected by this. And they really do need some sort of assistance. So it's good to see that money is actually being deployed. By technicality here in Baltimore City, we still cannot do rent raises, unfortunately. However, there's been ways to go through it. Something else that we've done to navigate some of this eviction process issue is to get a failure to pay rent, which starts our eviction process, is on literally a year backup, if not more. What we've been doing is signing 6-month leases. And the reason we're doing 6-month leases is because let's say you get in there and you're a deadbeat. Well, in 6 months, I can get you on a tenant holdover by not renewing your lease. And I can instantly file for a tenant holdover and get a court case literally within 30 days or less. And I can get the tenant out there. So worst case scenario, I'm only getting damaged for 6 months. Pre-COVID, on someone that didn't pay, we were talking about a 4-month turn. So it's a little bit slower, a little bit different. I don't like signing those 6-month leases from a financing side of things, but we did just refinance. And honestly, our bank was really happy with us. And we said, look, we're doing 6-month leases and here's why, and provided them the explanation. And they're like, wow, that's actually really creative. That's a great idea. We accept your 6-month leases. Because a lot of times the big banks, Freddie, Fannie, all those guys, they don't want to see the 6-month leases because now it looks more like a transient type property.
But that's obviously worked to your advantage by doing things like that. And that's just being able to think on your feet like that, just to try to come up with some creative solutions to whether you agree with the politics or not. You're having to deal with them. It's a reality for you. It's just like it's a reality for the tenants. You can still raise the rents though, Ian. If someone leaves,
correct,
you can and bring someone else in at a higher rate. You just can't raise rents on people who
we can't technically rate, like annual rent increases. We technically can't do that. And, part of the problem is with inflation and everything else going on. Again, let's stay away from the politics. But I wanted to go back to is this 6-month lease thing, like you were just saying, adapt and overcome. I think a lot of people lose sight of that, especially if you're working in a corporate job, you're like, whatever, I'm just doing my job. It'll work out. One competitive advantage for us from being firemen is we didn't have a choice, dude. Like, you got to go there and put the damn fire out. You got to mitigate the risk. You got to get the person you got to get this person, whatever the issue is, you need to make it go away. Well, that's the same thing here in real estate that we were able to translate our W-2 job to here is hey man, I got this issue. I need to adapt and overcome immediately. Let me figure it out. Boom, figured it out. It works. Let's continue on. Oh, that didn't work. Well, what's the next best plan we can do and continue to grow? If we didn't do that, we could have a 76 unit building full of just deadbeat tenants because we can't evict them for over a year. Do you think the bank wants to hear my sob story? Absolutely not. You need to figure it out.
Any other lessons from that deal, Ian, that we can kind of take with us that you might be able to share with us?
Yeah, I think follow up is a huge one, and I kind of get this rap of like, I'm a little more visionary type than my business partner. My business partner is more of an operator, so he follows up way better than I do. But if I never called Judy that day to say, again, complete relationship, hey, number one, how are you doing? Number two, are you interested in our next deal? Because we know you're coming into some money. That allowed us to open this other conversation of her saying, you know what? I'm having a terrible time with this. I screwed up. I want to go with you guys. I'm calling my lawyer right now to see if I can even do it. Just by us calling, again, just by being a friendly person, calling to say hi, trying to offer an opportunity to Miss Judy and saying, hey, man, we had this and it turned into something tenfold better than we ever expected. So
do you have a follow-up process now, or do you suggest something to folks who might be listening as far as follow-up goes? Because you thought you had lost that deal, and that's probably not, you weren't actually following up with her. It was almost just, hey, she's going to have some money. We got this deal going on. We're trying to raise private money. We're not even trying to follow up on this deal. So that it seemed like it was a complete accident.
Yeah, it was a complete accident. And you know what it did was, though, it opened our eyes to when we went back and we're like, man, like me and Dan actually took the time to celebrate it. Once we got that under contract, we were actually like we waited till we got out of our lawyer's office in the car and we both were like, yeah, got one. But then that made us go back and realize the most money we ever made wholesaling was in follow-up deals. The most money we ever made on like good, like flip type deals was, again, follow-up, just following up on deals that were going sideways. Usually when there's some sort of pain point or drama, that's where the money is. And we never really, it took that deal to make us realize it's all in the follow-up. That guy, Pete, the second guy, Pete, that I was telling you about that we did the apartment building with, that learned from us, he is very good. He's in corporate medical sales. And he's a supply chain coordinator. He's very, very good at following up. And he was wholesaling with us for a little bit when he was cutting his teeth. And the best money we ever made was in the follow-up deals. He talked to someone else would get it under contract at a higher dollar amount. They would shit the bed. We would come in and say, look, we told you what our offer was. We've been following up with you. And again, it's not just following up about the asset. It's following up and saying, hey, Mr. So-and-so, I remember you telling me this. How's everything going? Oh, by the way, what happened with your asset? Oh, it didn't sell. Great. Is there opportunity here for us? I think everybody should do some sort of follow-up, based on what type of marketing you're doing. If you're doing direct calls, follow up with, hey, did anything ever happen? Or, hey, how's it going? Just wanted to say hi. Or if you're doing mail, you should
following up with people that even just said that the deal's done.
Yeah.
And just knowing for a fact that it actually went through. I think some folks, and I'm guilty of this, where you don't get the deal. Maybe you did get outbidded, and they verbally tell you that to you.
Yep.
But you never actually took the time to do the research to see if it ever actually closed.
Yep.
I think that it's really important to make sure that we do.
Oh, and here's the other thing. You also got a base of people that that have just received money. Let's say you're in the wholesaling world and you need money to go do a deal. Oh, cool. You did wholesale that deal, or you did sell that deal to somebody else. Great. Hey, by the way, I just wanted to let you know we have this opportunity here. Utilize it, bridge it into something else, right? Like it doesn't always have to be so direct. Maybe there's other opportunity. Culture and nurture these people. You've started to build some sort of rapport with them, even though it might have been a 10-minute conversation, but you had the 10-minute conversation. No one else did. So
stuff, man.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, dude, the lesson in life, I think, is swinging the bat. We never did. We did a 7-unit building, and then we did that 34-unit building. And here we are staring down a 76-unit building. We own 100 single-family houses at this point. And when you look at a 76-unit building, people think I'm crazy when I tell them. I'm like, I'm staring up at the Empire State Building. They're like, dude, you did all this real estate. I'm like, nah, man, like you don't understand. Like for whatever reason, we put this notion around it that it was exponentially harder, but it wasn't. But we didn't know that until we swung the bat, right? Like you got to swing the bat. And if you don't ever do your first deal, you're never going to be able to do a deal like this. And I'm sure some people can break it and say, oh, yeah, I can get up there, hit a grand slam at their first at bat. But that's not always going to happen, right? Again, by doing single family houses or doing whatever it is that you want to do and getting really, really good at one thing is going to allow you to grow exponentially long term. And that was proven right here. If we didn't do all those other deals, even though we thought this deal was exponentially bigger, if we never did all those other deals, we would never had the investor base, we would have never had the financing base, we would have never had the understanding to even how to, could you imagine trying to go in and buy a 76 unit building and trying to figure out what your lease should say or not say during the middle of COVID? Right? Like, okay, oh, I don't know. I'm sorry, Judge. I didn't know I couldn't evict during COVID. Well, you should have known. You're the expert. You're the owner of this property. Luckily for us, we had all this background prior to this to learn going and doing one eviction and getting our butt whooped by the judge, right, and not going there with 30 evictions from one property and looking like a complete moron in front of all of our tenants as we're trying to tell them we're going to evict you, we know what we're doing, and then you get to the judge and the judge is like, no, you're an idiot, get out of my courtroom. And then now all those 30 tenants know that they got another runway for X number of weeks until the next eviction comes.
Ian, sitting here today as we wrap up, how much in real estate do you and your partner own?
Oh man, a dollar amount? Shoot. Why you gotta put me on the spot like that? We never really count. It isn't measuring dollars, I don't know what they say, but I'd say it's probably right around 40-50 million bucks of real estate. We've done very well. We got in a time when it was a hockey stick up. We came out of the recession, and we hit a nice hockey stick, and now we're just doing what we're doing, and just getting better at it every day.
To me, the story is I'm a full-time employee and I needed to find a way to make a little bit extra money. And we kind of fell into this and got a great mentor. Wasn't even trying to get a mentor, but just trying to learn.
Yep.
And you end up finding a great mentor and you end up just going, you just said it, swinging the bat.
Yeah,
picking up the bat and swinging and chipping away and chipping away and chipping away. You look up 10 years later and look where you are. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, man. I always thought Monopoly was a joke. I thought I just liked the game, but it's real life, and another one of quasi mentors / friends, my buddy Jason, who's a hard money lender, and he's about 6-7 years ahead of us, right? He started a few years earlier than us. He's like, you'll never realize what you complete in 10 years until you do it and look back and go, oh my God, how did I ever do that in 10 years? Well, we're coming up on 10 years and I'm looking back going, dude, I have no clue how I did it, but we did it and here we are. And it's absolutely amazing. And I can't even imagine what you can do in a 1 year, a 5 year, a 10-year period. What can you do in a 20, 30-year period? And that goes for anybody. Like, think about it. If you're 40, 50 and you're coming up on retirement, you could do this too. And in 10 years, right before you're ready to retire at 60, if that's when you want to retire, you could have a massive portfolio as well. So,
Ian Horowitz, thank you so much for coming on the show. Tell everybody how they can, you mentioned a book. How can they get a book? How can they get in touch with you? How can people reach out to you if they wanted to?
Yeah, man, you can check out subsidizedthebook.com. It's our book, Subsidized. It's also for sale on Amazon if you want it to get it from there. If not, we're all over social media, Equity Warehouse, or my name, Ian Horowitz. You can find me there. And finally, if you want to check out some of the case studies of some of these deals that we just talked about, you can check out investwithequitywarehouse.com, and you'll see some case studies on these exact deals that we talked about that got us to where we are today.
Fantastic. An incredible, inspiring story. Ian, thank you for sharing your story today. Guys, we love you. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you like our videos. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel. We love you guys so much, and we're going to see you on the next one.